Good day, everyone. My name is Mukund Madhu, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. On behalf of Barrow, I would like to welcome you all to another webinar from Barrow Insights. In today's webinar, we will have our presenters discuss the topic, Bringing Cost-Effective Innovations to Drug Delivery Devices. Before we move ahead with the presentation, I have, as always, a few general instructions. Please note that all attendees will be placed on mute. During the course of the presentation, if you would like to post questions, you will find a box on the right-hand side indicated in red. I request that you type in your question and hit the send button. As the presentation progresses, I will note down the frequently asked questions and pose them to the presenter at the end of the session. Should you experience any connectivity issues, I request that you close your window, go back to the email, and try to reconnect using the same link. If you face further problems, please do not hesitate to email Puneet at puneet.ramal@barrowinc.com, which you can also find in the email shared with you earlier. Moving on, allow me to quickly introduce our presenters for today's webinar. Swaminathan is a drug delivery devices expert at Barrow. He is a senior research analyst and specializes in providing drug delivery-related procurement intelligence to Fortune 500 companies. Swaminathan has been an opinion leader at leading industry events such as Extractables and Leachables conducted by Smithers Rapra. He has written and published papers in several leading medical device journals, including Plastic Pre-Filled Syringes, Breaking the Barriers of Glass, Impact of Medical Devices, Tax and a Proposed Way Out, and Managing Leachables and Extractables, a Supply Chain Perspective. Ambud Jain is currently the General Manager, India for Cambridge Consultants, working closely with pharmaceutical companies for their drug delivery requirements. He is a Bachelor's in Pharma and MBA by qualification and has been associated with the healthcare sector for more than 14 years, with experience in pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and drug delivery devices. He has worked with companies such as Sanofi, Ranbaxy, Abbott, and Becton Dickinson in the past, before moving on to set the operations of Cambridge Consultants in India 6 months ago. Without further ado, let me pass it on to Swami.
Thank you, Mukund. Hello, everyone. Before I take you through today's agenda, let me tell you why we decided to organize a webinar on innovation in the drug delivery device category. When growth in the pharmaceutical segment is mentioned, factors that are often credited with contributing towards this growth are the aging populations globally and a focus on improving healthcare infrastructure in emerging economies such as China, India, Brazil, Israel, and South Korea. However, it is also interesting to note that in the associated drug delivery and medical device segments, trends dominating the marketplace are somewhat counterintuitive to the factors I just mentioned. Hospital usage of medical devices has reduced significantly in the recent past. Regulations and reimbursements both continue to tighten, and there was a global decrease in US pre-market approvals in 2012, a trend that continued into 2013. In light of the above trends, it has become crucial for pharmaceutical companies to focus on innovations in devices in order to differentiate their products from their competitors. Today, we will focus on innovations that are driving change in the drug delivery landscape, what sourcing managers should do to leverage these innovations for their benefit, and how suppliers can help pharmaceutical companies achieve their present and future needs. Moving on to the agenda for this webinar, I will provide a short background on how the drug delivery devices market has evolved to its current state and how innovation has been an integral driver of change in the industry. We will also look at why there is a demand for innovation in drug delivery devices. Next, we shall discuss trends that are shaping innovation for devices in the future, along with some examples. I will also share how buyers can evaluate suppliers while selecting a potential partner. Mr. Ambud Jain from Cambridge Consultants will then explain how suppliers are preparing to meet buyers' expectations for cost-competitive innovations. Let us start by looking at some of the major developments in the drug delivery devices segment and how the industry has been constantly evolving to meet patient needs in terms of performance, safety, and usability. The nascent phase of the drug delivery segment, thought to be the period prior to 1980, saw the development of the metered dose inhaler, the dry powder inhaler, and prefilled syringe. These inhalers were single dose and capsule based. The prefilled syringe brought significant advantages to the traditional vial and syringe format, primarily by reducing drug wastage and the associated costs. The period from 1980 to 2010 can be thought of as the emerging and growth phases of the category. The inhalation segment saw the development of second generation multi-dose and multiple unit dose inhalers. A huge leap in terms of improvements in usability of inhalers was the integration of dose counters, both mechanical and electronic. As far as the parenteral device segment was concerned, the 80s and 90s saw the proliferation of pens and auto-injectors to meet the needs of the diabetes and multiple sclerosis therapeutic segments. Needle stick prevention laws were introduced in the early 2000s, and the industry responded by incorporating safety features into devices such as manual and automatic guards and retractable needles. The last 10 years have seen the emergence and growth of inhalers with active dispersion technologies, reconstitution devices, infuser patch pumps, microneedles, and electronic auto-injectors. These devices are expected to serve as the precursors to the devices of the future. Now that we have had a basic overview of the device landscape over the years, let us go a little deeper into understanding how innovation shapes device evolution, pushing the boundaries of device functionality and usability. A classic example demonstrating this trend is the dry powder inhaler. As I mentioned earlier, the first generation of dry powder inhalers were basically single-dose devices that delivered drug packed in capsules. Drug dispersion and actuation were passive, in the sense that the device relied on the patient's inhalation to turn the propeller and disperse the powder into the inspired airstream. After use, the gelatin capsule had to be removed before the next capsule could be placed in the device. Examples of such devices are the Spinhaler, developed by Aventis, the Rotahaler, developed by GSK, the Handyhaler, developed by Boehringer Ingelheim, and the Cyclohaler, developed by Pharmachemi. Single-dose inhalers had certain inherent disadvantages, as is probably evident to most of you. The device had to be loaded each time before use, which could be inconvenient for patients with restricted finger or hand movement. Moreover, the capsules themselves could potentially be prone to damage from humidity. To overcome these issues, multiple unit dose and multi-dose inhalers were developed. These devices still relied on the patient's inhalation for drug dispersion, but offered the advantage of easier usage when compared to earlier single-dose devices. There are basically two kinds of second-generation devices. Devices such as the Aerohaler, developed by Boehringer Ingelheim, and Discus, developed by GSK, hold the drug in multiple unit dose formats, whereas devices like the Turbuhaler, developed by AstraZeneca, hold the drug in a reservoir from which multiple doses can be inhaled. Essentially, both generations of inhalers still present one potential problem which device manufacturers have felt the need to improve upon. Since the devices are actuated by the patient's inhalation, the device would not function properly if the inspiratory flow rates were not adequate enough to trigger dispersion. This could be a potential inconvenience for certain age groups and patients suffering from intense bouts of breathlessness. To avoid such problems, a new generation of inhalers has been developed in the past few years. These devices have incorporated active dispersion technologies which rely on compressed gas, motors, or other electronic components to aerosolize the drug and deliver it to the patient's lungs. Examples of such devices are the microdose DPI developed by Microdose Therapeutics, which was incorporated into Novartis's pulmonary device platform in 2011. The Inspiromatic developed by Inspiro Medical, a company that was acquired by Opco Health in May this year, and Spiros delivered by Durapharma. Durapharma merged with Elan Corporation in 2000. We have seen how innovations in technology bring improvement to the devices, and let us now take a look at the benefits innovations can bring to the various stakeholders in the healthcare sector. These stakeholders are the 4 Ps: the pharma companies, patients, physicians, and the payers or reimbursement agencies. As far as pharmaceutical companies are concerned, innovative drug delivery devices help increase the efficacy of the drug, thereby increasing drug credibility in the market. In highly competitive markets, innovative device formats can help achieve product differentiation and set the manufacturer apart from their peers in key therapeutic segments. The device also acts as a USP for the drug and helps reinforce the trust thread established with physicians over a period of time. For patients, innovations in devices can be a huge boon, especially for tech-savvy people who would immediately take to the improvements in functionality and usability. Even for other user demographics, reminders on devices would help in adherence to timely dosages. Innovative devices can also provide targeted solutions to different age groups by providing customized add-ons or modes which are age group specific. Physicians would also benefit from novel devices which have the potential to provide greater clarity on specific therapeutic treatments. Often, these innovative formats lay down standard protocol for usage, which would benefit the physicians by providing them additional information of drug efficacy on patients. Lastly, the demand from payers or reimbursement agencies for innovative drug delivery formats can be linked to their agenda of reducing healthcare costs. Increased patient adherence and reduction of hospital visits as more and more patients have the ability to self-administer drugs would have a significant impact on current costs. Payers, again, also have the advantage of access to data on drug efficacy. It is quite clear that the answer to the question, is there a demand for innovative delivery devices, is a resounding yes. But what about the supply side? What are the innovations that are available for pharmaceutical companies to leverage? More importantly, what are the trends that are shaping the way suppliers look at innovation? If we want to understand the innovations dominating the market, we need to first understand the design goals that device development companies seek to implement when coming up with a new product. Barrow has interacted with multiple industry stakeholders in a variety of roles: buyers, suppliers, and independent experts. And in our opinion, the 3 most important trends that are projected to shape innovation in drug delivery devices are personalized healthcare, integration with electronics, and a focus on usability. Let us examine each of these trends in greater detail. As more and more patients seek to administer their own drugs, device manufacturers are increasingly being tasked with the responsibility of developing devices that are simple and reliable. Buyers are realizing that in order to maximize drug reach and ensure payer coverage, there is a need to prove an improvement in adherence to a drug with innovative technologies so that the patients can better manage their conditions and the cost of care comes down. Insurance companies want to be able to measure this improvement, and if manufacturers can demonstrate how much of an impact patient-centric dosage formulations and delivery systems can have, they will be more apt to reimburse more of the cost. Thus, a large focus of device developers and manufacturers are to come up with innovative solutions that can enable patients to administer drugs for critical therapeutic focus areas conveniently, effectively, and regularly. Few examples of devices developed keeping in mind this trend are the Twister DPI, developed by Aptar Pharma, is a capsule-based DPI which is easy to use with 3 simple steps: insert, twist, and inhale. The product is also cost-effective. Aptar is targeting the Asian market with this DPI and has tested and collected data on various drug formulations, validating Twister as an off-the-shelf device suitable for a variety of different drug compounds and formulations. Aptar has started its production from their facility in Suzhou, China. Another example of such a product are the e-devices from Aptar, which are basically sprays incorporated with electronic technology. They have 2 different functionalities. The first is the eDose counter platform, which helps in nasal and sublingual spray delivery of pain management drugs. Second is the e-lockout platform, which removes the biggest problem of sprays, that is overdosing, and is thus very useful in delivering potent controlled substances. The last example is IRA from Cambridge Consultants, which is a reusable auto-injector. The device quickly warms medicine to body temperature, reducing the viscosity and making it easier and quicker to deliver the dose. The auto-injector features a large, easy grip handle and simple push-button mechanism for automatically priming the device and delivering the injection. The syringe is loaded into the device with the cap on, making it safer and less frightening for the patient. The cap is only removed immediately prior to injection with the needle out of sight within the device. Integration of electronics and software has been another key trend shaping innovation in the devices category. Wireless-enabled drug delivery devices offer huge potential to address several critical healthcare issues such as cost escalation, provider shortages, and proliferation of chronic conditions, while offering patients the convenience of using their familiar phones and tablets to transmit medical information to their physicians. Continued miniaturization of electronic components plays perfectly into the use of electronics in medical drug delivery devices. With flexible circuits, chip-on flex circuits, reduction in the size of memory, microprocessors, and passive components, smaller handheld drug delivery devices that previously contained no electronics can now be designed with electronics for data collection and communication. Let us look at a few examples of devices in this category. The Omnipod Insulin Management System, developed by Insulet Corporation, is a tubeless insulin pump consisting of a pod which is wirelessly controlled by a personal diabetes manager. The pod delivers insulin based on the patient's personal setting, whereas the PDM has a built-in glucose meter, suggested bolus calculator, and other functionalities. Insulet has manufactured more than 25 million Omnipods, and in August 2014, the company partnered with Dexcom Inc. to allow information from Dexcom's fifth generation continuous glucose monitoring system to be identified, received, and displayed on Insulet's new Bluetooth-enabled personal diabetes manager, currently in development. Insulet has also announced an agreement with Amgen to supply a delivery device specifically designed around the unique delivery needs of biotechnology medicines in December 2013. The Smart Inhaler by Nexus 6 is an intelligent monitoring device which can be attached to any compatible inhaler, both PMDIs and DPIs, for monitoring the device usage. The device has sensors to note the device usage and then automatically uploads the data on its cloud database, from where this data can be accessed on a smartphone or computer. Use of this inhaler has clinically proven increases in adherence to medication by up to 18%. This may also result in savings, as it may avoid patients to be switched to more expensive medication due to non-adherence. Nexus 6 has partnered with multiple companies like Merck, AstraZeneca, and GSK to integrate the Smart Inhaler platform with drugs in their portfolio. Examples of drugs include Dulera, Proventil, Advair, Symbicort, Pulmicort, and Ventolin. Mankind Corporation's BlueHale technology can be used to monitor inhalation of the patient. The data obtained is used in optimizing dry powder pulmonary drug delivery. This system wirelessly transfers real-time pressure time profile to a graphical user interface, which even enables the subject to meet the optimum inhalation level. Mankind is using the BlueHale technology to develop their line of DPIs. The technology is being used for clinical trials in order to reduce unwanted variability and for patient training on approved drug therapies. The last important trend we shall look at is an increased focus on usability, ergonomics, and patient-centric design. Designing a device keeping the user in mind is often critical to achieving device success. When it comes to patient-centered drug delivery, topics like safety, minimization of side effects, and efficacy are paramount in the development process. But some in the industry fail to understand that portability, social acceptability, and a good understanding of how patients interact with the delivery device are topics that must also be considered. A better understanding of patient-centric drug delivery will lead to better patient outcomes, which is clearly the overall goal of all industry stakeholders. When developing the device and the labeling, industry experts recommend catering to the lowest common denominator. For example, if a portion of the target audience might have difficulty reading, that factor has to be considered when designing the instructions. Currently, there is not much customization for different patient populations. For example, is producing an inhaler for a patient in their 20s and another one for patients in their 60s. We may see more of that in the future when companies get more involved with addressing patient subpopulations. But until then, there is a need to minimize side effects and maximize adherence for all potential patients. Again, let us look at a few devices designed around this trend. Extavi Pro 30G, developed by Novartis, Cambridge Consultants, and Owen Mumford in April 2014. This particular auto-injector was specially developed keeping in mind multiple sclerosis patients. This auto-injector is designed with a focus on ergonomics, and the device looks and feels less like medical devices. The injector can be used with one hand and has a shape that helps in grabbing, as this is needed for patients with relapsing multiple sclerosis. The device has been commercialized by Novartis and is available in Germany and Europe. It is paired with Novartis' Extavia. The device is not yet available in the US. The Microdose DPI, developed by Microdose Therapeutics, has a high-frequency piezo transducer and other electromechanical elements which are utilized to impart force to the powdered drug so that they can be delivered into the patient's lungs without much effort. This inhaler contains a piezo vibrator and the drug is placed on it upon actuation. When the patient inhales, the sensors automatically disaggregate the drug and aerosolize it in the patient's airstream. Microdose Therapeutics partnered with Novartis to incorporate the DPI into Novartis' pulmonary device platform in May 2011. The company had earlier announced that Novartis is funding development and commercialization of products that use Microdose's DPI technology. LyoTwist Monodose family of devices developed by Ypsomed uses a twisting method for reconstitution and priming. The devices also provide a visualization of the reconstitution, priming, and injection steps. Ypsomed offers built-in needle safety in the device in combination with ClickFine Auto Protect safety pen needles. Companies like GSK and AstraZeneca have partnered with Ypsomed to use the LyoTwist devices for their drugs. Having covered the trends shaping innovation in the market, it would be useful to also understand the factors that design houses and device developers feel are crucial to device success. Buyers need to focus most of their attention on these factors when working with suppliers to co-develop devices. Presented here are the results of two key questions in a survey conducted by eInfochips in January 2014 of over 600 members from the company's database and LinkedIn groups of device designers totaling around 250,000 members. The questions of most relevance to us are shown here. To the question, what is your biggest challenge in completing development of new devices? The largest group of respondents, totaling around 35.5%, said that achieving regulatory compliance is the most important challenge faced by them. Other popular responses include replicating all use case scenarios, design verification, test development, and software development. To the question, what is most critical to the success of your device designs in the future, 41.9% of the respondents replied that continuing to out-innovate competition is the key to success in the device category. 19.4% thought that lowering product costs was imperative to succeed, and 12.9% believed that reducing time to market was essential. Thus, to summarize, most development stakeholders agree that achieving regulatory compliance is the most important concern when designing and developing innovative products. Development stakeholders are increasingly feeling the need to come up with technologies that push the boundaries of functionality and usability, apart from reducing costs and reducing time to market. The last topic that I would like to cover before handing over the presentation to Mr. Ambuj is how buyers should evaluate suppliers for sourcing innovation in drug delivery devices. It should not come as a surprise to anyone that partnering with the right supplier with the appropriate capabilities would improve the chances of bringing an innovative product to market significantly. Given the present market trend towards supplier consolidation, Pharmaceutical companies would prefer partnering with a supplier who can support them across device formats and therapeutic areas. Gone are the days when suppliers could be evaluated and chosen based on their expertise in designing specific device types. The current market scenario makes it necessary for buyers to identify suppliers who have expertise in developing platforms and customizing existing technologies to suit specific needs, irrespective of the nature of the device. Category managers are used to evaluating suppliers based on key performance indicators that measure supplier capability to perform in highly competitive markets. Most of these KPIs are listed here. When it comes to sourcing innovative devices, though, the key factor to consider is how efficiently a supplier can turn an idea into a functioning, commercially feasible product. In light of this, the KPIs for evaluating suppliers for the design and development of drug delivery devices are as follows. Regulatory compliance. Does the supplier understand the nuances of the regulatory scenarios in the targeted geographies? What might be sufficient for gaining approval in the US might not be enough for bringing the device to market in China. Flexibility. Suppliers should be flexible and responsive to inputs from the buyers and users at each stage of the design process. Time to market. Preferred suppliers are the ones who can start work on the design process immediately and accelerate time to market. This is tied to our next two factors, technology and IP and patent portfolio. What IP does the supplier own that can be leveraged to ensure timely development? Other important KPIs are proven links to manufacturers to ensure the design prototype can be produced on a commercial scale and that the tech transfer process is smooth, and track record of working with similar clients on innovative products. I would now hand over the presentation to Mr. Ambuj, who would explain the supplier side of the story.
Thank you, Swami. Good evening, everyone. I would like to present in the next few slides the initiatives which are being driven by design companies and a lot of other device manufacturing organizations to be able to bring more of cost-effective innovation in case of drug delivery devices. As we know that accessibility and affordability in emerging markets can surely take a leap towards the upper side if we are able to control costs in these markets which are highly price sensitive. So if we talk in terms of cost-effective innovation, some of the needs which are very essential to be able to target this segment across the globe, first of all includes that all these emerging markets need market appropriate products / devices at affordable price points. And one of the possible ways of doing this is that an organization needs to evaluate the must-have and the good-to-have features, segregate them according to the needs of the market, because the more features you add in a device, the more cost escalation you are supposed to witness. For example, in the previous slides we talked about electronic integration. That is for sure happening. But if you want to develop a device, the objective wherein is to help increase penetration, you have to control some of these electronics if you want to control the cost share. If you're able to club the must-have features and bring it to a low-cost manufacturing location, this is a sure shot way of producing a product which is suited to the market requirements at an affordable cost. The second very important and critical need is in terms of containing costs and time of development, while in the process definitely achieving differentiation in the market. One of the trends which has been witnessed in this segment includes a lot of pharmaceutical companies picking up an off-the-shelf device, which means a platform product which is available from any of these manufacturers of medical devices, and coupling it with a lot of user studies and industrial design activities so as to be able to make a highly customized product which is a copyright to the pharmaceutical company. We will talk about a couple of these examples in the next slide. The third very important need for a cost-effective innovation is in terms of risk assessment and program management, which should happen throughout the process of development and then commercialization. A company which is able to incorporate very strong risk assessment processes during the development cycle is for sure able to minimize the risks which arise at the time of industrialization, and hence ensuring that the cost as well as the time for the client is as per the agreed timelines at the very beginning of the project. Next, we go to a couple of examples. So the first example is that of Bydureon, which is a brand from AstraZeneca. This product was already in the market, and there was an issue which was being faced with this product. The issue was more inclined towards the device. The company was facing high failure rates because the users were not being able to prepare the drug correctly. As a result, the company, in fact, AstraZeneca hired us, Cambridge consultants, to be able to, with the objective of making the entire injection process for the patient as simple as possible. What was done was an extensive array of usability testing so as to ensure that both patients as well as healthcare professionals were able to successfully use the pen. After all these changes have been done, the product is again back to the market and is doing well in line with the expectations. The other example, which again was touched upon by Swami in one of the previous slides, is that of the Extavia Pro. Here, Novartis was sourcing the product from Owen Mumford, and they hired Cambridge consultants because they wanted to make the product much more user-friendly. As mentioned previously, multiple sclerosis patients have cognitive, visual, and physical problems. And hence, with the existing devices on the market, these patients had usability problems which could be as varied as they found the device really intimidating, very uncomfortable to use, issues with visibility while fixing up the doses, and hence, basis the insights of around more than 500 patients and healthcare professionals, a simple, intuitive, non-threatening, and a single-handed injection procedure was developed, and as mentioned, this product is already in the European market. What's very important to note is that the end result of this kind of an activity is that the risk of innovation is reduced, so as is the cost and the timeline attached for innovation. Finally, we just wanted to touch upon the topic of functionality of innovation, functionality in terms of innovation, and how sustainable is this kind of a functionality getting added to a device. Generally, what we've realized is that there is a kind of an inverse relationship between functionality and sustainability. So let me just explain what we mean by this. If you look at the Western world, the US and the European markets, companies are trying to move towards making more and more sterile products, which basically means a single-use device. You use the device and throw it out, and there is no need for you to be reusing the product, and thus ensure sterility in the process. But from a sustainability purpose, This brings down the sustainability levels of such an initiative to lower scales. Because what it means is we move from a reusable product to a disposable product. This will lead to the cost of therapy going up for the patients. And of course, it creates a lot more waste. Most of these devices are made of plastic, and this has a negative environmental impact. So if we are trying to do some innovation which is focused on the emerging markets, we have to look at features which are must-have and maybe some of the functionalities which can be sustained on the long run. Similarly, if we try to develop more durable products, the sustainability of the product is much higher, but parallelly the cost goes up. And maybe this may not be the thing which we like to target the emerging markets with. And finally, there is a small initiative which has been tried but has not been very successful, is the use of natural products in devices. Can the use of natural products be increased in devices, but the success rate which has been achieved in trying to develop devices with natural products has not been significant as of now. This is what I wanted to share from a design industry purpose as to what all initiatives are being taken to make more cost-effective innovation. I would now like to hand over back to Mukund.
Thank you, Swami and Abuj, for that very illustrative presentation. We have a couple of questions from the audience. First, what would be the estimated cost of developing an innovative device?
Mukund, I'll take that up. Firstly, the question is a bit open-ended. Drug delivery devices cover a lot of ground, and there are a lot of unknowns, such as how much research is needed. So basically, does the device exist? If it does, is it patented? What is the intended use, the market, etc. Then there is the design time, prototypes, testing, possible design tweaks, maybe some more testing, and then maybe it goes to marketing. Then after marketing looks it over, maybe there's a redesign for marketing and then some further testing, the whole patent process, etc. However, we have done a rough analysis for clients in the past, and the breakup is somewhat as follows. So if you consider the salary of engineers and consultants, assuming that we are using 3 to 4 personnel, would be somewhere in the range of $500,000 to $600,000. Prototyping and the parts, that would also require somewhere close to $400,000. The testing would itself take up around $100,000. Then there's the 510K preparation, which would probably take up $100,000. Physicians need to be consulted on a case-by-case basis, and this could take up around $200,000. Then, of course, there are the IP costs, which involve searching for any existing patents and filing the IP. So this could also possibly go up to somewhere close to around $250,000 to $300,000. Then, of course, there's the QA validation and the inventory costs. So both of these combined, maybe around, we're looking somewhere close to around $600,000 to $700,000. So everything put together, I would say that roughly the cost for developing a device would be in the range of $2 to $5 million. But then again, you again need to consider a lot of factors like the complexity of the device and the other factors that I have mentioned earlier. So this is probably the best that we can answer this question.
Thank you, Swami. One other question. What might be the best ways to ensure regulatory compliance?
When you're talking about regulatory compliance, what is ultimately necessary is that companies should work a lot on getting user inputted data, like Mr. Ambuj just said. And there also has to be a lot of effort that goes into developing a product that meets all the specifications that I mentioned. I think Ambuj would be a better person to answer this question. So Ambuj, would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, sure, Swami. So basically, and this was discussed during the presentation also, depending on the market where we are trying to develop the product for, the regulatory issues will differ. So for example, if you're going towards the US market, the regulatory barriers are much more higher and stringent as compared to the emerging markets. So one example I would straight away like to share is that of, for example, human factor studies or the usability studies, which have become critical from a regulatory filing purpose once you try to develop a product and submit your dossier to the US FDA. The same happens now for the European markets also. Hence, as a result, while you are developing a product, you will have to do some formative studies, few validation studies, and that data is submitted as a report as a part of the overall filing. While this may not be a compulsion or a compulsory thing to be followed in emerging markets currently. So hence, according to the target market for which the product is being developed, the regulatory strategy and basis the compliance which needs to be followed is finalized.
That's it. So thank you everyone for your participation in this webinar, and thanks Swami and Ambuj for their presentation today. Goodbye.